Hey everyone, I'm Shanta Jackson, and my purpose in life is to help people to help themselves and others. And welcome to today's show. I have joining me my colleague and friend, Brian Sims of Baltimore. Uh, Brian is a father, a leader, a husband, and he's also an advocate and equity leader. Welcome, Brian, to the show.
Thank you, Shanta, for having me today.
You're funny. So, how's everything? You have echo?
Things are well, considering. I think that we all are dealing with a lot right now when you think about COVID, when you think about a connection, and you think about just all the struggles that people.
Oh yeah, I think we have some a little technical difficulties. Brian is currently frozen on my end. I don't know if he's frozen on your end. Just go ahead and type in the chat and communicate with me to let me know. But for today's show, Brian and I, and we'll probably be joined by a special guest and whoever else wants to join in. But today we're going to talk about just the political climate, something a little bit different. Well, I guess it's a little bit different from what we usually talk about, even though in the past I have had a few advocates on. But we're going to talk about what's going on with the U.S. Postal Service. Is the U.S. Postmaster General intentionally trying to sabotage the Postal Service? What are some of the key messages that we heard from the DNC? What are the issues that we care about? And then also, now that the actual protests have come to an halt, what is it that we're going to do moving forward, and is there an agenda, and if so, what is our agenda? And so I'll bring Brian back in, and then actually we have, I'm sorry about that, Brian. It's so
It's all right.
yeah, no, it's okay. And actually I'm going to bring in my cousin Latoya as well. Latoya Watchery, from she's joining us from Las Vegas. Hey Toya.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing?
Hey, how are
Good,
you?
good.
Good.
So Brian, Latoya, Brian, and so I was just letting everyone know, what our topics would be. Let's just get started with the U.S. Postmaster General.
Oh, God.
So I'll tell you what I know and what I read. And so I'm trying to be objective, and I'm trying not to just follow the headlines and kind of let that influence me. Yesterday, I did listen to his testimony with the Congress, and so what I learned is that two board of governors for the Post Service, they quit prior to him coming on. And from my understanding, it was because it was believed that Trump aides were coming in, and they didn't agree with following necessarily his orders. Um, what else do I know? And so DeJoy, the U.S. Postmaster General, um, I'm trying to think. He's his business background is in logistics, and he owned a company that he sold interest in. Brian, I put you on mute for a second. It's one of you. I hear a lot of background noise. One of you. Maybe it's me. I'm trying something new today with my audio with these headphones, so I apologize, audience. Yeah, so basically what I was saying, what I do know or what I understand is that he has a logistics company that he sold, but he still has stake, multi-million dollars of stake in that company. When I say multi, I'm talking like over $30 million in stake in that company, and that company still is a vendor. He still has interest in this company. He has stake, and that company is a vendor to the U.S. Postal Service. And so that right there is a conflict of interest. And if to my understanding, if it continues, it can be an illegal conflict of interest. So I'll let you all chime in. And just to, I can't assume that everyone in the audience knows the background, but if you can share with us your perspective of what's going on. We can start with Brian.
Thank you for that setup. I think that anyone, and can you hear me okay, Shanta? Okay, yeah. Anyone who's been paying attention to the Trump administration over the last 3 years, what we're seeing with Postmaster General DeJoy is a signature of the Trump administration and many, if not very many, of his appointees and those who are serving in this administration, and that is the grifting of office. Being in office and using it for personal gain, and that really what it seems like the end game is for many of them. And I think that the coincidence with voter suppression in this upcoming election, with the fact that we're going to a lot of mail-in voting across the country, is just a coincidence. I mean, I think that I shouldn't say it's a coincidence. I think it's an intentional suppression effort, and it just happens to also benefit this signature of the administration, and that is personal gain, doing things for personal gain. And so, again, I don't think we should be surprised by it, and I think that we definitely need to debate it to act, but we also can't allow their attempts to suppress our vote by dismantling the postal system to be a reason that we don't do as much as we can to vote. You heard Michelle Obama at the DNC earlier this week say, we're going to pack lunches and, camp out all night if we have to. And, unfortunately, those are the measures that we have to take. But I think that it's really unfortunate, but it's a signature of this administration.
Yeah, I agree. That's just who we got in our White House now. We have a bunch of thugs. Postmaster General, what's his name? Louis Dubai or whatever his name is.
DeJoy.
Okay. Just hearing all of the slick things that he's doing, as far as just slowing down the postal service in itself. You got our current president saying that he's concerned about voter fraud, but we have a postmaster general who's cutting off not unemployment. He's cutting off overtime. He's not allowing those who work their regular shift, if they're on vacation, to take on to let someone else take on their shift to get the mail delivered. You can't. He's defunding the postal service to make it more difficult for honest voters to be able to get their mail. And here's the other thing. It's not even about voting so much. A lot of elderly people are affected by the slow process of the mail. I'm going to call it snail mail now, because in real life it's becoming that. They depend on their medication. A lot of people still pay their bills away, especially our grandparents and seniors and things of that nature. And you just got a lot of thugs under this administration. Steve Bannon was just arrested. The Fed just caught him on his boat because he's connected to fraud for a wall that people are funding to be built. And him and his team, two other guys, I believe, are pretty much just stealing money from people. And so you can look down the list of any, the people that are under the Trump administration and see their criminal activity, the charges they've been brought against them. Some of them have been arrested. You're right. I'm not surprised about this guy. And I mean, this is the most corrupt presidential team, whatever it is, that I've seen ever in my life. This is just outrageous. And I hope that this guy is brought up for charges and thrown out of his seat. He doesn't deserve to be there.
Yeah, what you were saying about thugs, what I was thinking, I was like, oh, these are like the untouchables. Or at least, or at least it appears for now. So we have to keep in mind how many of his colleagues and former staffers and affiliates have been indicted and arrested and are currently in prison. And so I personally, what I didn't mention is that DeJoy also rallied for and fundraised for Trump and contributed to his campaign as well. And then he coincidentally gets appointed, right? And so what I personally, and let's move on to the DNC and some of the messages, but what I personally think is going to happen with DeJoy and others in the White House who, as of now, seem like they are untouchable and that they are above the law. I personally think that once Biden and Harris get in office, I think that with Kamala Harris's background as an attorney, as an attorney general, and as a U.S. senator, I think that she might be charged with the investigation of these individuals and these acts, and maybe reversing some stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot of, and I hope I think it's going to be a lot of indictments, and not just with the Trump administration, but also with members of our Congress and other business individuals. Like, think about all the contracts that are going out right now with COVID-19, who's actually getting the contracts and where they're using the money for. I think it's going to be a lot of investigations going on for years to come.
And the beauty of it is, Shanta, is that if Trump is not in office, he can only pardon people up to, I think, January 19th. If he's not in office, then it's beautiful. When they start pressing all these charges and indicting everybody, at least the charges will stick and stay, and they'll be held accountable by sitting behind those bars.
Yeah, and we'll see who's really a thug and who's really about that life.
In real life, these are some corrupt, people in office right now, and they're showing themselves, and it's, clear as day to us. It's just amazing that this man has been able to pull this off. Like, he's still in office thanks to the Senate.
Yeah. So, Brian, what messages did you hear from the DNC? Let's start with the messages that we heard, and do we agree? What was missing?
Okay, and real quick, I just want to comment on that last little segment about prosecutions. I think I'm just a lot more cynical about that. The Democratic Party is often the party of quote unquote forgiveness and moving on and bringing everybody together, and I just don't see them doing any of that. I see the Trump administration and the people that are doing these things getting away with every single act of it, and I think that they have lined their pockets for generations. And unfortunately, I don't see anybody that is going to have the will in the Democratic Party to pursue any of that. And because we've seen it before, and we'll see. But I think that after this election, if Joe Biden hopefully wins, I think that, we'll see this reckoning, and we just want to move forward and we want brighter days. So I'll leave it at that. That's my take. The messages that I heard from the DNC, starting with night one, really were messages of desperation, of getting back to a sense of normalcy. I think that the most powerful messages that I heard, three of them really, Michelle Obama, obviously, and just her kind of laying bare what's at stake. President Obama, same thing, just laying how severe the stakes are. And then there was also a woman who spoke, I think on night one, I forget her name. She spoke about her father who passed because of COVID. And she was like, the only pre-existing condition he had was voting for Trump, was supporting Trump. And I thought that was a really powerful message. And I think they hit the nail on the head with that. I'm a bit conflicted, though, because while we need leadership and we need an adult, the bar is so low. We need an adult in the White House and in the administration. We need adults leading all of these agencies. It was kind of sad to see so many people across the country so desperate for leadership and so desperate for somebody to help them out of this. And, I think that it speaks more to how we have to build our own systems of autonomy and self-sufficiency, because, all it takes is the wrong person in the White House, and we're at the whim of their misdeeds and or their incompetence. And so that's the message that I kind of took away from it. But the messages that I think we heard by and large, and maybe we'll get into specifically the messages that Biden shared, but just overall, it was just a sense of desperation and the severity of what's at stake come November.
What about you, Latoya?
Well, I watched bits and pieces of the DNC. I have it recorded on my DVR. It was interesting the way the setup was, the convention, I'm sorry. And because, previously it was, this big old hoopla with a bunch of people around and cheering and everything. And I like the setup a little bit better for a few reasons. One, because I think it feels more personal, that they were talking directly to their constituents. And I agree with you, saying that, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Brian,
I'm sorry, Brian. I agree with you, Brian, when you said that, basically they definitely, weighed heavy on, just bringing some normalcy and some dignity back into the office, because, you think about other countries don't even respect us anymore, as well as the people, that live in this country. We don't respect the office of presidency, and it's because of who our president is. I was it was just a regular political event to me. I know what their intentions are, and I appreciate it. I'm kind of concerned about how the Republicans convention is going to go, because they definitely have an opportunity to counter anything that was discussed. A lot of important factors were mentioned. I think, even mentioning the lady, I think her name was Kristen, who lost her father because of COVID, but she trusted in Trump. I don't even think that kind of stuff sticks to those who are still thinking about supporting Donald Trump. I don't think they care about that, because I think a lot of people who even that know, that going through this COVID, they don't believe in it. Basically, they support what Trump is saying. They don't want to wear the mask. They think, even though, 5 million people have contracted it in the country, in the world. I mean, and they're still on the fence about this. I don't think it's going to change anything. I think more or less this convention is basically to keep those who are already supportive of Kamala and Biden motivated to go out and bring other people in. That I don't know if this is going to change any minds at this point, though.
We have a comment. Are they really gangsters, or are they showing us the flaws in the laws?
They're gangsters. America was born of gangsters. Gangsters came to this country and took over. So it's just been gangster. It's been gangster since day one. That's no denying. But these ones right here think that they can just, do it in our face.
Okay. So this brings me to actually that question, or that probe for us. It actually makes me think of accountability. Mm-hmm. And just by the way, good morning, Amina. She's saying hi from Las Vegas. It's morning for her, afternoon for us. But I'm thinking about accountability, and so some of the messages that I heard. So they're definitely running off of the leadership messaging from Black Lives Matter and from the protests. And so I think, Brian, I would like to disagree with you. And I'm thinking that it's up to us, and I'm hearing we the people. I'm definitely hearing the leadership theme. There's the leadership theme, and then there's, we the people. So we the people, this Democratic Party right now, they are running off of the messaging that Americans have expressed, what we feel are the flaws in the system and what we feel is wrong. Mm-hmm. And so it's up to us to hold them accountable. And one thing that I'm paying attention. I'm like, okay, so they brought in Republicans to support this ticket, Biden and Harris, and to vouch for Biden and his work ethic and his leadership and his record. And so it's almost kind of like the Democratic Party is like, for now, I don't know if they're being fluid or kind of like chameleons, and just, do you think that, whatever to win? But I think at the same time, they're kind of being safe. I tried to watch as much as I could. I watched for 2 days, and by the third day, I'm just kind of like watching the highlights and trying to read. But I don't recall seeing anyone like the progressive platform. I hear some of the messaging. I feel like the progressive platform is not there. Or the like the real pro, like the strong, the pro-Black, and then even though there's that messaging that they are using for Black Lives Matter, I feel like they're appeasing to kind of like the noise. And while our Indigenous brothers and sisters were mentioned, it was brief, and while our Brown brothers and sisters were mentioned, it was brief. I'll stop and just kind of let you respond to some of my comments.
You know what? I think you're right. The Democratic Party for a long time, and especially now, and I think that there was a message there that it is the big tent party. It is the party that is welcoming to all. And that's one of the things I'm always proud of when I see that on display, is just how diverse the party is, age, gender, sexuality, race, culture, everything, you name it. But I also think that sometimes that's an issue that is not well addressed, and that is You know, I think they do play it safe. I do think that to not offend certain groups, they don't address certain issues that we have deserved to have been addressed for far too long: civil rights, black rights. You know, the things that some of the things that the Black Lives Matter movement are bringing to light, and things that have been brought to light for generations. I do think they are afraid to touch it. I think that's one of the criticisms of Joe Biden, is that he's been, you know, he hasn't spoken to these issues very articulately. It's been maddening for me sometimes, the way that he addresses race issues and the way that he talks about it. And so, you know, I think that the positive thing is that he might not be the one to deliver that message, and you're probably not going to get that on at the DNC convention, because again, you're hearing. I think the fact that you heard from a lot of Republicans, you heard a lot from people in the central part of the country, in the Midwest, is trying to bring some of those Trump voters over to the Democratic Party and to vote for Biden, which I think, in my personal opinion, is problematic, because that means you're appeasing to white supremacy, and you're appeasing those issues that those voters who voted for Trump, where they differ on, or how it, I guess, differs from what the Black Lives Matter movement and what Black activists and people seeking Black autonomy and sustainability, I think, are seeking. I think those are counterproductive to one another. But you know, I think at this point, it's whatever it takes to win is what I think the mindset is. And so the thing is, I think people have to remember, is whether Joe Biden is a perfect messenger or not, the expectation is that he's going to have the right people around him that are going to seek and pursue the things that are going to move this country forward for everybody. And I think that's the important thing to keep in mind and to remember. And so we might not have heard those messages at the DNC, but I think, you know, we are maintaining faith that he's going to have the right people with the right message, and the right delivery of that message, and the right action behind those messages. I think that we are holding faithful to that.
Yes, I listened to an interview yesterday with Bernie Sanders. I believe it was someone from the Washington Post, and one of the questions was, "Would you join the Biden administration?" And would that be something you would consider? He was like, "Yeah, I would consider it, and I would listen, but it would have to be the issues that I want to work on. If he wants to put me in charge on some of the things, basically," and I'm paraphrasing, but basically, I have my platform and I have my beliefs. As long as it aligns with my values and what I think should be done, and if I can be in charge, I'm not going to be a yes man, but if I can actually be in charge of making sure that something is implemented, then yes, I would consider it.
I know that, yeah, Bernie, I'm sorry, Shanta.
No, please.
Bernie he sticks by, you know, what he believes, and I do believe that. I don't know why he's still a delegate, though. I don't understand that at all. I could, you know, just to speak to that, one of the things he did do in the Obama administration was, in effect, was they were trying to privatize a portion of the Postal Service, and the Obama administration was supportive of that. And Bernie fought tooth and nail against it because he did not want to give a portion of the Postal Service to, you know, private organizations. And so I guess that's why we're here again, where they're trying to privatize the entire thing. So I understand him sticking to his guns, and I respect that. I don't understand why he wants to be a delegate still. He's still tampering with the whole election to me. I will say that, yeah, you know, speaking to Brian, no, I don't think that the Democratic Party in any way is trying to change the mind of Trump supporters per se, but bring in people who may have voter apathy, who don't even want to be a part of this game, or maybe they're going to vote third party in that way because they're just over it. So I think they're pushing the issue as to why you need to vote and why you don't want to keep old boy in office still. So I think that's there. I don't know if it's as strong as it needs to be. I know that Biden's voice may not be as aggressive as we might want it to be, but it's all written out. He does have a Black agenda, and it's on his website. He addresses, you know, 99% of the issues that I've heard people talk about as far as within the Black community and, you know, progress for us. So he is discussing a lot of those things when it comes to, you know, equal housing, racism, policing, education, just, you know, even reparations slightly. So I know there's no perfect candidate. There's no perfect marriage, right? So nobody's going to be perfect, but we look at who is going to represent the America. Like, Trump doesn't do that in any respect. He only represents himself. I think he would throw his own mama under the bus. So that really just, just, rest in peace, mama. But I'm just saying, it's a sad place that we're in right now. But I think that we just have to keep pressing the issue for those. I think the main people we have to keep on board are those who have voter apathy or just, want to do a protest vote. We can't do that. And I think the more I'm listening and playing back the convention in my head, I think that's what the message was for me: to vote your interests, vote, to make America better, because right now it's in a really bad place thanks to the president we have. Over 170,000 people have died of COVID because he thought it was a hoax.
Yeah, I know the messaging of vote your interests. That is something, I forget the group, but it's a millennial focused advocacy group, and that's what they're telling younger people. They're not necessarily saying who to vote for, but it's vote for your interests. And I agree with both of you as far as like who. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's for individuals who are undecided, but then I also think that they're trying to, some people are just trying not to vote at all. Even President Obama, he said that in his statement and in his speech. He said, by now, most of you have decided who you're voting for.
Yeah.
So if we've already decided, it's no need to talk to me. So, who are you talking to? Or are you talking to me to give me talking points so that I can convince other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your messages and what do you think about those individuals? And what would you say to change their mind of, what, this Trump has not, Trump doesn't make me or break me. It doesn't matter. I'm not voting anyway. I'm not interested in being a part of this process.
I'll say two things. One of I saw somebody comment on Facebook that they were supporting, that they're more interested, and I'm actually not even going to use all the offensive language they use. And this was a Black person that said they were more interested in their business and their gun rights than any, I'll just say, gay people's right to marry and other like social issues. They're more interested in that. And I think that's just such an ignorant perspective. I think that the more people understand how our collective well-being is in the best interest of all of us, I think that we'll start to see some of that apathy go away. And we have to be able to deliver those messages. Elected officials, politicians, people seeking elected office don't always connect those dots and don't always do a good job of doing that. And so I think that's a problem. So I think that we have to continue to drive home the message that it's important for our collective well-being. It's important for us to understand, how our collective well-being impacts all of us. And then also, one of the other messages, and I think Biden, this was a good point in his speech, and I think this is true. And again, I think that some of this stuff is a low bar, and it's unfortunate that the bar is so low, but it is what it is. And that's, I think, another quote from Obama or Michelle. It is what it is. And that was what he said was, he's on the ballot in November. Kamala Harris is on the ballot alongside him. And so are every other position that we'll be voting for in November. But also on the ballot is decency, is compassion, is science, is leadership. I mean, all these other intangibles which we see are now tangible. These things are on the ballot. It's not just Biden and his plan for Black America or Biden and his plan for the economy. It's as simple as, but as important as compassion, intelligence, believing in science. These things are on the ballot as well. And I think that was a strong message to get at that apathy that we're talking about, to get people to the polls, regardless of whether or not you think his plan is exactly what we need, whether you think that he articulates things in the most perfect way. At the end of the day, this is really about the dignity and the humanity of our country.
It is. And, just to, when you're talking to people and trying to target it and spark their interest, you have to definitely talk about things again. What are their interests? And one of the things is the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare. So the Supreme Court is set to review 1 week after the president is elected into office this year, whether or not the Obamacare will stay as is or will it be dismantled. So that's something that's important. Think about a lot of people that will have pre-existing conditions now with COVID, and that's something that the Republican office is trying to get rid of. I think that everybody should have access to free and or affordable health care. And it's our money, it's our tax dollars that they're disseminating and deciding what they're going to pour it into. So those are one of the things that I want my tax dollars to go to. And I know a lot of the millennials and younger voters and people who may have voter apathy would have an interest in that. Also, the Supreme Court, a lot of Supreme Court seats are being appointed. That is very important to us, especially when we talk about women's rights. So as a woman or a man, if you want the rights of a woman to be protected, you need to vote your interest and stick with the Democratic Party. Again, it's not perfect, right? But it's about the greater good. It's about getting most of your needs met versus all of your needs met. And the other thing is, even with the tax credit, the earned income tax credit needs to come back, and the Democratic administration is proposing to bring that back. So a lot of the things that people will sit home and decide that it's, they don't want to be a part of this. It's going to affect them not to vote. It's going to affect them to keep Trump in office again. Here's a man who's saying that he's willing to possibly suspend the Constitution, which he actually has the right to do that. Suspend the Constitution. That's a Hitler move. That's what Hitler did and was able to take over a country and do some very awful things to some Jewish people. So, I mean, it's a lot to focus on, and targeting people who are not interested. Yes, we need to bring the dignity back. And I think a lot of people don't really care about that as far as, just the toxicity of our president. They might even be amused by it, but I think they are concerned about their money and their parents, their health care, the environment. That's a big deal. And if Biden and Kamala get the office, Bernie will have more leverage because he will have the support of the Biden and Kamala administration. So those are the things that I hope that people will think about when they're just saying they don't want to be a part of it. It affects you, it affects your parents, it affects your kids, it affects your future. It could, when people say it could mean some people's lives, it has been over 170,000 lives so far. So that's how you have to look at this. This is serious. It's not a game. You can see this man has no background. He no education. He has no qualifications to be in this seat. Yet he is. And he's, Barack Obama said it best, speaking to him just not being the man for the job. He's just not competent.
Okay. We have a question that I'll put on the screen shortly. For me, I'm thinking about some of the local issues and things that I'm concerned about. So let's talk about cancer in this country. Yeah. There's our environment, things that we breathe, and whether or not a type of business, that regulation, that's the Environmental Protection Agency. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm voting for. The ingredients in my food that I'm exposed to, that my son is exposed to, and what's legal and what can legally be put in food ingredients, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that is causing, why is it that someone from California and New York why are they having the same type of cancers? What do we all have in common? Is it our food? Is it our water? Is it the air? Those are things that I'm concerned about. Mm-hmm. And I do know that when the Trump administration came in, a lot of the things that they did dismantle was, one, the Environmental Protection Agency and some of the protections, in addition to some of everything else. Whatever, I guess it was just anti-Obama, just whatever, anti-anything, right? And so I'm encouraging people to, kind of think it's, yes, we have our social and economic woes, but we have to think about our health and our education system. So this is back to social and economic, but we have the school to prison pipeline. We have children right now in Baltimore City and Flint, Michigan, and Washington, D.C., and certain places in Chicago, a lot of the older cities, where children right now are being exposed to lead.
Mm-hmm.
We have in maternal child health issues, and particularly in the African American community, Black mothers are more likely to die during childbirth or after childbirth. And I'm not just mentioning that because it's in the headlines because of that's what's popular right now. But we have a lot of different health issues. We have a lot of mistrust, a lot of discrimination, a lot of just unfair systems. Think about the monopoly game, right? If five people to the right are allowed to play the game, and they're allowed to buy up all the property and kind of do everything, and then you have the second set of five people that come in, and it's discouraging, and you don't even want to play the game anymore, right?
Yeah.
So we do need to change the game, and for me it's a lot of just health issues, and then just you drive around in certain communities, what is going on with this local government to where this is even allowable for a community to look as if it's abandoned. There's no city upkeep, so these are some of the local issues, and so our local city councilmen, our school board members, different things like that. Those are some of the issues that I'm concerned about. I hear a lot of background noise from somewhere. You hear it? No? Weird. Okay, so we have a question. Do you agree that Bernie Sanders has hurt the party by having followers who protest when he is not at the top of the ticket? Has he taken his followers, away from the greater good, in your opinion? Who wants to take a stab at that?
I think your cousin froze, so I'll go ahead and take a shot at it. I think that looks like something is coming up. I think that I think Bernie's. Can you hear me? Okay. I think that Bernie really ignited something in his base and really motivated them to get out and be vocal and be loud. I think that he doesn't necessarily promote them doing that. He doesn't ask if they do that. But I think one of the things, and it came up earlier, one of the things that's important about, having those delegate votes that he had at the DNC was to influence the party's platform. And I think that's something that people don't understand. It's all really a strategy, which is why Biden reached out to him and helped him to develop his platform a bit, because he had that base of support. And that's just one of the things that's in the DNC rules. And so I think his activists and his supporters, Bernie's base, they understand that. And so that is part of the strategy for doing that. And I'll let the other guests comment on that as well. But I did want to get back to the point you were making about the things that are important to us, medicine and things that are important locally. So I'll pause there.
She
dropped out.
Yeah, she'll come back on. Yeah, so okay. I want to apologize to the viewers. We did have a little buzzing, but it's fixed now. So let's see. And so, Brian, you recently ran for city councilman in District 7, Baltimore City, and you tell me about what your platform was. And even though you did not get selected, what are your plans moving forward?
So the reason that I ran is because I work in healthcare. I work in healthcare policy, and I work to identify strategies to help reduce health disparities and improve health equity through hospitals in the state of Maryland. I work for the Maryland Hospital Association. And in that work, I realized and had a greater appreciation and understanding for, how these conditions that lead to these disparities and these inequities really are driven by policy. They're driven by the understanding of how the decisions that policymakers and elected officials make, how it impacts people's health, and that those disparities in health and disparities in equity, those health inequities, really deprive us of the most precious thing that we have, and that's our time here on earth. And so, my reason for running was making sure that some of the policies as a city council person, particularly representing District 7, was to make sure that those considerations were taken into account, to make sure that the decisions that I was responsible for and the influence that I had on the council at large understood and took measures to address these generational, these disparities that we've seen, particularly in West Baltimore. These health disparities have existed and persisted for generations, and I think it's an injustice. And so that was really, understanding that it was going to take some grassroots efforts, some community-based organization efforts. It's going to take efforts from everywhere, but it's also going to take political power, influence, and understanding to address these. So that's why I ran. I think that since losing the primary, I've been able to, really deepen my commitment to those goals, either through my work, which we're doing a lot of really interesting things to address racial equity and health disparities, and working with partners to do that work, and also working with community organizations to be able to understand the healthcare industry and how the interventions that they have, the solutions that they have, how they can navigate the industry to bring those solutions to the forefront. And so I'm excited about some of the great work that's being done there.
Well, thank you, and I'm proud of you. And we need more people like you, some more individuals that you have your certain skill and your certain your gift. And we all have our own families and different obligations, but whatever we can do, even if it's within our own organizations and our own groups that we're already affiliated with, or just within our own block and our communities. So I appreciate that. I'm going to bring Latoya back in for a closing statement. Latoya, are you? So Brian ran for office. Is that something that you're interested in?
No, ma'am. I'm sorry, I missed it. What office did you run for, Brian?
I ran for city council here in Baltimore City. So I would have been one of 13 council members throughout the city, in my particular district, so West Baltimore.
Yeah, I have been asked, to actually get my feet wet within the political arena, but I just don't think that is my lane. I know that I have some purpose in the political arena, and I'm willing to help those, push the agenda that I think is important. But as far as me holding a seat, even though as important as I know it is, I'm just not, no.
I always say, I gotta keep a clean record. And then every time I do something, I'm like, oh man, I might be a politician one day. How can I
don't think my skin is thick enough.
Let me think of my rebuttals now for all the dirt that I did. But I just want to encourage everyone out there. Actually, I'm going to mute you, Latoya. I think it's like a buzz that I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So for everyone who's out there, if you have a family member that is not interested in voting, please I hope we provided just some type of talking points or some things of interest to you that maybe you feel like you can carry on this conversation at your tables within your home or within your families. If you or anyone has been convicted of a felony, you still are in most states eligible to vote. There's a website, I think there's a vote411.org, and there's another one. I wrote it down. I think it's restoreourvote.org or something like that. But you can just kind of search to see what's going on, what the rules are in your state. But I know for sure in Maryland and in Nevada, as long as you're not on probation or parole, you are eligible to vote. So don't think that you can't vote. Brian, Latoya, anything to add?
I'll just say this. I think that, what makes our democracy strong, is not voting. Not voting, not just voting. I think that voting is the easiest thing that we can do. It's just the first step. I think what makes it really work and what makes it strong is to participate across the spectrum of our democracy, protesting, writing letters to your elected officials, paying attention, watching city council meetings, watching press conferences. I mean, and not to get deep into just the punditry that you see on TV, but I mean, really paying attention, particularly to your local politics, because I think that one of the issues that we have is that people don't feel like they are accountable to a constituency because they don't, by and large, we don't pay attention. I mean, we look at the rate at which we vote, the rate at which people make their voice heard, either through letters, through calling their offices, is way lower. And I think that we have to, as much as we have to make sure that we vote, we have to also participate across the spectrum of politics. And I think that, it that doesn't mean that everybody should run for office. I mean, I think you can be more impactful not being in office. But I think that we have to let them know that we are paying attention. I mean, you just saw a number of people from the Democratic Central Committee in Baltimore City forced to resign. I don't know if that's the right term, but because they ran for that office, they sought that office, and they didn't do their job. They didn't attend 50% of the meetings. And I think you see people that are seeking elected office for selfish reasons. And the Republicans don't have a monopoly on that. Trump and his administration are doing that in a way that I don't think we've seen ever. But, people who are seeking elected office for their own personal gain and for reasons that are outside of serving a constituency, that is across the board. And the only way that we can help solve that is participating across the board and being heard.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, Brian. I just want to encourage people to think about strategy. It's about strategy. I was originally registered independent because I didn't want to belong to a party. That it kind of stopped me from being able to be part of a lot of local elections. I was a part of the, I can't think of the name of it now, but we did the whole thing where we picked what person we wanted for president earlier in the spring. I had to change my party from independent to Democrat to be a part of that because I knew that I wanted to get Donald Trump out of office. I came up with a strategy. So I registered Democrat so that I could be a part of the process of trying to get someone who I thought could beat him. That was my mind state, just to beat him. And that's what I've been doing. No, you may not agree with every policy that Biden has been a part of, that he has implemented, but he has his ear open to the community, to us as a people. He understands how important our vote is, especially as Black women, and we back our men. So he knows that he has to also implement policies that are going to support our Black men and children. As far as Kamala, you can't listen to all of the rhetoric. Think about, one of the things Brian said is on the Democratic side, they're very soft and nice, right? And then on the Republican side, think about it. You don't hear any Republican saying anything negative about Trump. That's not to say that they don't think Trump has done anything bad. It's just to say they are thinking about strategy. They want this man to have 4 more years in office, so they're not going to talk down about him publicly. And we have to have that same mind state. We have to think about Biden and Kamala as one of our family members right now. It's strategy. And we don't talk bad about our people in public, right? Especially if we have a strategy to get Trump out of office. So if that's what we're focused on, hold their feet to the fire on November 4th. I support you 100% with that. A lot of things, don't give up now, but all of this rah-rah that we doing before they had an opportunity to prove themselves is hurting us. So I just want to just brand that in people's brain. It's about strategy. Talk bad later. Right now, act like the Republicans. Let's take a chapter out their book to see how they win. They don't talk bad about each other publicly. We know it's some stuff that we need to clean up, some house cleaning we need to do. But right now, we just need to treat them like angels
And on November 4th, then we let the truth be heard, and we'll handle it. And I'm sure those two will work to meet our needs. And you have to remember that it's just not Kamala and Biden that they need there's three branches of government. So they can't make all these changes. So even if we don't get everything we want, it's because we're not voting locally and we're not putting the right people in office that support our interests. But I just want to close with strategies. Talk bad later, please. Por favor.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very well said, as Dr. Arthur Webb says.
Thank you.
So election day is Tuesday, November 3rd. And we, in some states, within the next 2 weeks, as early as September 4th, from my understanding, in some states, you'll be able to vote early. We opened the conversation and we talked about some of the delays and some of the issues with the U.S. Postal Service. Yeah. Whether you believe that there is some intentional sabotage or not, the message, and this is a message from DeJoy, from our U.S. Postmaster General, he said to vote early. So vote so my message to you for our immediate next step is to vote on November 3rd. And again, as Brian and LaToya mentioned, it's just not about the presidential election. This is the key thing. But even the Senate, there's 4 houses. We need 4 seats in the Senate, Democratic seats in the Senate. So just vote your entire ballot, research the candidates in advance. I would hope that you would just, maybe some people, just kind of go down the line and vote Democratic, but you vote for whoever you want. But just know that person that you're voting for, that judge that you're voting for, research their records, do some research, have your stuff written out already. If you're voting via mail, send in your ballots as soon as possible. For the primary, I actually never received a ballot for the primary, and I voted in person. And so what I plan to do for myself is to vote early, but I plan to vote early in person for me. That's my choice. So everyone, COVID is still here. Still be safe. I see a lot of you out having fun and taking pictures and going to events and not wearing masks and not practicing social distancing. Just keep in mind that none of us are immune to our knowledge of COVID-19 because we don't have any tests for immunity, right? And there is no vaccine for COVID-19 as of now. And everyone just be peaceful, be safe, and thank you, LaToya and Brian, for taking time on this Saturday to speak with me and to my audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Shanta. Thank you. Nice meeting you, Brian.
All right. Yeah, be blessed.
Thank you for having me. Nice meeting you.